And we'll be pushing you all semester long to become more extemporaneous, using your keyword, topic, or presentation outline is that leap of faith that you have to learn to take to become an extemporaneous and more dynamic speaker. All right, lastly, forecasting and echoing. When you are outlining, you want to think about your main ideas as forecasting and echoing. So, main ideas need to echo your thesis statement. That's what I mean by echoing. You want to make sure that when you have a main idea there, that your audience feels and hears and gets a sense of your thesis statement. At the same time, you want those main ideas to forecast what's coming ahead, to have a sense, to give your audience a sense that, okay, given this main idea, I have a sense of where this person is going to be going with this speech. Okay, echoing the thesis statement, forecasting main ideas to come. Okay, echoing and forecasting. Two important concepts that are part of the art of public speaking and the art of writing well. And that works for essays as well as speeches. Let's talk a little bit about transitions now. Transitions are the connective tissue of your speech. You've got to use verbal signposting. That's what transitions are. They're verbal signposting. Lets your audience know where you've been and where you're going. If I were to mention or to think of one thing that often really makes the difference between, say, a B+ speech and an A speech, it's transitions. A student who really is intentional, conscientious, and does a good job with his or her transitions, that speech often comes across as much clearer and better prepared than otherwise is the case. So, don't give in to the temptation to think, Davin's taking me back to 8th grade and I'm going to ignore this stuff because been there, done that. Transitions aren't important. Don't do that. Transitions are important. You need to think about them and be intentional about them. That's the way to do it. Now, there's a handout, and your text also has some good information about transitions and what are some good ways to transition when you've got specific types of arranging in your main ideas. So are there particular transitions you might want to use when, say, you have a chronological arrangement of your main ideas? That's how specifically you want to be thinking about these things. Okay, getting into that much detail. Also, something to think about in terms of transitions. You think about them in terms of 3 parts: an internal summary, a link, and an internal preview. Okay? Internal summary is when you're transitioning out of an idea and into another main idea. That internal summary tells your audience, okay, this is where we've been. That internal preview says, okay, this is where we're going. Okay? And this is, you can think about that forecasting and echoing piece of this. This also ties into that. And then that link provides a logical connection between the internal summary and the internal preview. Okay? So you want to think about it that way. And if you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to ask. Let's move on to talking about introductions and conclusions. If there's one part of your speech that I would say you can memorize, because I don't want you to memorize your speeches. Again, we're looking for extemporaneous style of speaking. That isn't memorized. But I would say a good part of your speech to memorize would be your introduction. Other things that might be good to memorize are your source citations, okay, or particular phrases or quotations that are particularly meaningful. You want to nail your introduction, especially if you feel like you've got nerves, if you're anxious and worried about your presentation. Memorize that introduction and nail it, because you'll start with good confidence. It'll make your audience feel much better about you. You'll have stronger credibility, and you'll be able to take a deep breath and say, I really communicated well what I wanted to say in that introduction. Now, some things that you shouldn't do with your introduction. Don't be like everybody else, okay? I am going to encourage you, in fact require you, in our speeches this semester, to begin them with an attention getter. That means I don't want you to begin your speech by saying, "Good morning. My name is Davin Carr-Chellman, and I'm here to talk to you today about secondhand smoke and the dangers that it poses to the public at large." Every speech under the sun begins that way. And if you want to make sure that your audience is ready to tune you out, begin it just that way. Now, there may be some situations where you need to begin your speech that way. I understand that. But I want you to begin your speeches this semester with an attention getter. Okay, that means a startling statistic, a moving story, a great illustration or example that's going to be compelling for your audience. Okay, that's what you're working on. Things to do in your introduction. You can look at I want you, in fact, to look at the skeleton outline in this regard. The things you need to do: 1, get your audience's attention. 2, establish your credibility to talk about that topic. 3, introduce the topic clearly. 4, relate the topic to the audience. And 5, give a concise thesis statement and preview, roadmap of where you're going to be heading in the speech. 5 elements to a good introduction in Carr-Chellman's INSYS 297A class. Those 5 elements, I want to see them. All right? All right, let's talk about conclusions. A big mistake that folks often make in a conclusion is you're tired of your speech, you rehearsed it so many times, and you're just exhausted from the anxiety of giving a presentation. So people sort of give up when it comes to the conclusion. Don't do that, right? Maintain your energy level, maintain your enthusiasm all the way through to the end of the speech, okay? What you don't want to do with the conclusion is to get to the end and say, "Okay, that's it, I'm done. Thank you very much." And then you sit down. It provides no wrap-up, no sense of closure for your audience. Your conclusion needs to have a different tone, a different sense to it, because that prepares your audience emotionally and mentally for the fact that you're wrapping up your speech. How do you do that? So what do you do in your conclusion to make that happen? 1, you want to signal that the conclusion is coming. In many cases, people will say, "In summary," etc. Okay, that's a very basic way to do it, but also very effective because people know that it's happening. You want to offer a creative summary of your main ideas. I didn't say restate them word for word. I said offer a creative summary of your main ideas and your thesis. And lastly, you want to offer a clap line or a clincher, as your textbook refers to it. Something that your audience hears it and says, "Okay, he's done. I'm going to clap now," right? "Okay, good speech, bravo," that kind of thing, right? You might, re-emphasize the relevance to the audience or have a really powerful quotation that encapsulates your central message. Something that they know. That's the end. It's time to clap.